The Witch in the Wood by T.H. White, Chapter 11. The children slept in the highest chamber of the great keep. Their bed was a pile of skins, the pelts of wolves, bears, arctic foxes, and a few rarities such as the snow leopard. This latter was the softest and most beautiful. There was hardly anything else in the room, only a sort of night light made out of a wick floating in seal oil in a seashell. This burned in front of an old golden picture which showed a lady in a blue robe holding a baby. Her head was in a hoop, and the usual rushes strewn on the cold stone floor. These were strewn as thickly as straw in a horse box to keep off the cold. There was also one thick chest made of oak, which held their clean clothes. The rest of the clothes were scattered about the room among the rushes. Through the skins and rushes and untidy clothes, the four heads of the children stuck up, like those of a party of seals bathing. Outside the window, which was 4 feet thick, and dropped sheer into the Atlantic hundreds of feet below, there was the noise of the breakers. They sighed and snored. It was a beautiful summer night. The children were talking before going to sleep. "What was our mother doing," asked Gareth, "with those 2 nights this afternoon?" Gareth was the kind, affectionate son, you remember, a regular hero-worshipping romantic. "It was something chivalrous," he added, "I bet." "Well, it wasn't then," said Agravain. He offered no reason for his assertion, but merely contradicted, for reasons inside himself. He was the bully, and he was cowardly and horribly jealous of his mother. "How wasn't it?" asked Gareth. "Palomides said they were going to catch a unicorn." This was Gawain, the eldest. If Gareth was stupid, Gawain was not exactly bright, but at any rate he was sturdy, loyal, and warm-hearted. His only fault was that he could not control his temper and sometimes became obstinate. "They didn't catch it," said Agravain. "I know they didn't catch it, then." "Then it wasn't chivalrous." "It would be chivalrous," said Gareth, "to try to catch it." "Not with those 2 fools," said Agravain. "They ought to be shot with those bullets." "They aren't fools," said Gawain. "They wouldn't be staying with our mother if they were, and besides, you can't shoot guests." "Why not?" "Because not." "I think," said Gareth, "that King Pellinore is a famous man. I bet he catches that questing beast." "Well, I bet he doesn't, then." "Oh, you know everything," said Gawain. "Clever Agravain knows everything. Clever, clever." "I'm not clever." "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." There was a discussion about this for some time, until Agravain began to cry. "I don't care if I am clever," he said. "It's better than being stupid and a beastly stupid bully." "Well, you started it," said Gareth. "How did I start it?" "By saying about the unicorn not being chivalrous, and about the knights being silly." "Well, they are silly." "I vote," said Gareth, "that we have a unicorn hunt of our own. Nobody will notice." "It would be something to do." "It would be better than not having anything to do. We haven't seen our mother for a week." "She's forgotten us," said Agravain bitterly. "No, she hasn't. You're not to say that." "Well, it's true, isn't it? We haven't even been down to serve at dinner." "It's because she has to be polite to the knights." "No, it isn't." "What is it, then?" "I won't say," said Agravain. "If we could do a unicorn hunt," said Gareth, "and bring one back for her, perhaps we would be allowed to come to supper." "It would be grand," said Gawain. Gareth said, "It says in Palomides' book that you have to have a maid for bait." "Well, we've got a lot of maids, haven't we? We could have any of the maids, or cooks, or nanny." "They wouldn't come." "We could get the kitchen maid," said Gawain. "We could make her come. We could pull her hair if she didn't. And then when we've caught the unicorn, we'll bring it home in triumph and give it to Mother. Hooray! We'll come down to supper every day. She'll be pleased. Perhaps just after supper, just to watch. And Sir Grummel will knight us. He will say, 'Never has such a doughty deed been done by my halidome.'" The unmarried maidservants were housed in a long dormitory between the north tower and the gatehouse. It was on the 2nd story above the armory. Gawain tramped across the cobbled courtyard next morning and climbed the stairs. "Now then," he said, "you've got to come with us on the moor and catch a unicorn." "Oh, Master Gawain," said the kitchen maid he had caught hold of, whose name was Meg. "Yes, you have. You've got to be the bait. It will come and put its head in your lap." Meg began to cry. "Now then, don't be silly." "Oh, Master Gawain, I don't want a nasty unicorn. I've been a decent girl, I have, and there's all the washing up to do, and if Mistress Truelove do catch me playing truant, I shall get stick, Master Gawain, that I will. Gawain took her by her plaits and led her firmly out. In the clean wind, on the high tops, they discussed the situation. Meg, who cried incessantly, was held by the hair to prevent her from running away, and occasionally passed from one to the other, if the one who was holding her happened to want both hands free for gesticulation. Now then, said Gawain, I'm the captain. I'm the oldest, so I'm the captain. I thought of it, said Gareth. The question is, it says in the book that the bait must be left alone. She'll run away. Will you run away, Meg? Yes, please, Master Gawain. There. Then she must be tied. Oh, Master Gareth, please, need I be tied? You shut up, you're only a girl. There's nothing to tie her with. I'm the captain, and I command that Gareth runs back home to fetch some rope. That I won't. But you'll spoil everything if you don't. I don't see why I should have to go. I thought of it. Then I command Agravain to go. Shan't. Let Gareth go. I won't go. Meg, you wicked girl, you are not to run away, do you hear? Yes, Master Gawain, but oh, Master Gawain. If we could find a thin, strong tree, said Agravain, we could tie her pigtails together round the other side of it. We'll do that. Oh, oh. After they had secured the Virgin, the four boys stood round her, discussing the next stage. They had abstracted rear boar spears from the armory, so that they were properly armed. This girl, said Agravain, is my mother. This is what mother was doing yesterday, and I am going to be Sir Grummore. Bags being Pellinore, Agravain can be Grummore if he wants to, but the bait has got to be left alone. It says so in the book. Oh, Master Gawain, oh, Master Agravain. Stop howling, you'll frighten the unicorn. And then we must all go away and hide. I'm going to be Sir Allbars. I shall be King Connor. Oh, Master Gawain, pray don't leave me alone. Shut up, said Gawain. You're silly. You ought to be proud to be the bait. But mother was yesterday, Gareth said. Never mind, Meg, don't cry. We won't let it hurt you. After all, it can only kill you, said Agravain brutally. But at this the unfortunate kitchen maid began to weep more than ever. Why did you say that? Said Gawain angrily. You always try to frighten people. Now she's howling more than before. Look, said Gareth. Look, Meg. Poor Meg, don't cry. I'll let you have some shots with my catapult when we get home. Oh, Master Gareth! Oh, come on, we can't bother with her. There, there. Oh, oh! Meg, said Gawain, making a frightful face. If you don't stop squealing, I'll look at you like this. Meg dried her tears at once. Now, said Gawain, when the unicorn comes, we must all rush out and stick it. Do you all understand? Must it be killed? Yes, it must be killed dead. I see. I hope it won't hurt it, said Gareth. That's the sort of foolish thing you would hope, said Agravain. But I don't see why it should be killed. So as to take it home to mother, you fool. Could we just catch it, said Gareth, and lead it to mother, do you think? I mean, we could get Meg to lead it, if it was tame. Gawain and Gareth agreed to this. If it's tame, they said, it would be better to bring it back alive. That's the best kind of big game hunting. We could drive it, said Agravain. We could hit it along with sticks. We could hit Meg too, he added as an afterthought. Then they hid themselves in their ambush and decided to keep silent. There was nothing to be heard except the gentle wind and some heather bees and some skylarks very high and a few distant snuffles from Meg. When the unicorn arrived, things were different from what had been expected. He was such a noble animal to begin with that he carried a beauty with him. It held all spellbound who were within sight. The unicorn was milky white, with hooves of silver and a graceful horn of pearl. He stepped daintily over the heather, scarcely seeming to press it with his airy trot, and the wind made waves in his long white mane that had been freshly combed. But the glorious thing about him was his eye. There was a faint bluish furrow down each side of his nose, and this led up to the eye sockets and surrounded them in a pensive shade. The eyes, circled by this sad and beautiful darkness, were so sorrowful, so lonely, so gentle, and so nobly tragic that all emotion was killed by them, except the emotion of love. The unicorn went up to Meg the kitchen maid and bowed his head in front of her. He arched his neck most beautifully to do this, and the pearl horn pointed to the ground at her feet. And he scratched at the heather with his silver hoof to make a salute. Meg had forgotten about her tears. She made a little royal gesture of acknowledgement and held out her hand to the unicorn. "Come, unicorn," said Meg. "Lay your head in my lap if you like." The unicorn made a whinny and pawed again with his hoof. Then very carefully he went down first on one knee, then on the other, till he was bowing in front of Meg. With every consideration, he looked up at her from this position with his melting eyes, and at last laid his head upon her knee. She stroked his soft white cheek against the smoothness of her dress, looking up at her beseechingly, so that the whites of his eyes rolled with an upward flash. He settled his hind corners coyly, and lay there looking at her always. His poor eyes brimmed over with trustfulness, and he lifted his near fore in a gesture of pawing. It was a movement in the air only which said, "Now attend to me, give me some love, stroke my mane, will you please?" There was a choking noise from Agravain in the ambush, and at once he was rushing out toward the unicorn with his sharp boar spear in his hands. The other boys squatted upright on their heels, watching him. Agravain came to the unicorn and began jabbing his spear into its quarters, into its slim belly, into its ribs. He squealed as he jabbed, and the unicorn looked toward Meg in anguish. It leaped and moved suddenly, still looking at her reproachfully, and Meg took its horn in one hand. She seemed entranced, unable to help it. The unicorn did not seem able to move from the soft grip of her hand on its horn. The blood caused by Agravain's spear spurted out upon the blue-white coat of hair. Gareth began running with Gawain close to him. Gareth came last, stupid and not knowing what to do. "Don't!" cried Gareth. "Don't! Leave him alone! Don't! Gawain came up just as Agravain's spear went under the fifth rib. The unicorn made a dreadful shudder. He trembled in all his body and stretched his hind legs out behind. They went out almost straight, as if he were doing his greatest leap, and then quivered, trembling in the agony of death. All this time his eyes were fixed on Meg's eyes, and she still looked down at him. "What are you doing?" shouted Gawain. "Leave him alone, he's all right." "Oh, unicorn," whispered Meg. The unicorn's legs stretched out horizontally behind him and stopped trembling. His head drooped in Meg's lap. After one last kick, the legs became rigid, and the blue lids rose half over the eye. The unicorn lay still. "What have you done?" cried Gareth. "You've killed him. He was beautiful." Agravain shouted out, "This girl is my mother. He put his head in her lap. He had to die." "We said we would keep him," yelled Gawain. "We said we would take him home to mother and be allowed down to supper." "Poor unicorn," said Meg quietly. "Look," said Gareth, "I am afraid he is quite dead." Gareth stood up in front of Agravain, who was 3 years older than he, and could have knocked him down quite easily. "Why did you do it?" he cried. "You're a beast, a beastly murderer. He was a lovely unicorn. Why did you kill it?" "His head was in our mother's lap. It didn't mean any harm. Its hooves were silver. It was a unicorn, and it had to be killed. I ought to have killed Meg, too." "I think you were a swine," said Gawain. "We could have taken it home and been allowed to come to supper." "Anyway," said Gareth, "now it is dead." Meg bowed her head over the unicorn's forelock of white, and once again began to sob. And that's the end of chapter 11.